I started the company to solve the data problem that was in the industry, and then said if we could solve the data problem, then we have permission to put the applications on top. We can take data out of China, which is a really big differentiator. That a lot of products are still sourced in China, and we can also, so we can do visibility from China to Vietnam, Vietnam to China, China to anywhere else in the rest of the world. At the end of the day, it's a three-party system. The shipper or the LSP hiring the carrier, they have the commercial agreement, and they're the ones that are dictating, do they want to have connectivity to that carrier?
And I have paid more than 100,000 on damages, honestly, just because we did not have the visibility.
We like to say it breaks down into 4 steps. You connect, you see, you act, and then you can automate.
Pepsi or Coke?
Oh, they're both customers.
That's why I asked the question. You can't pick one? Come on, you have to pick one. If Project 44 was a superhero, what superpower it would have? This video is brought to you by us, SCM Dojo. We provide awesome courses, guides, best practices for supply chain community. Hi folks, welcome to one more episode of Supply Chain Show, and I am actually super excited today. The reason I'm super excited because I've got one of the most CEOs, or one of the most famous CEOs in the supply chain space, and this is Jett McCandless, right? He's the founder and CEO of Project 44. They have been quoted as one of the fastest growing startup unicorn in this area. The journey of Jett is fantastic, and we're going to talk about that maybe later, but what I would mainly focus on right now is this change of strategic direction, which Project 44 is moving, right? So you're moving from our visibility to more towards, autonomous supply chain, right? So let's start with sharing your strategic plan and why focus on autonomous supply chain. And most importantly, a lot of people have claimed it, how are you going to achieve it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So Project 44 started as the connective tissue for logistics, and it was really clear that that was the problem that the industry needed to solve first. It didn't need another application in 2014 or 2015. It needed data connectivity. And we've seen so many other industries benefit from that, whether it's fintech or payments or travel or communication, Stripe, Plaid, Twilio, Visa, companies like that. And so that was where a lot of the inspiration came from. And that then gave us permission to build the first application on top of that data platform, which was visibility. And we became the heavyweight champs, as you mentioned, for visibility with every measurable way, whether it's by revenue, customers, carrier network size, scale, scope, geography, everything. And then we've taken that visibility and other parts of that data platform and said, great, let's get more into the execution part or take action on it. And when you have those first 3 layers built, you can really start to automate. So that's what we're in the business of doing. And that's all wrapped up and packaged together as the decision intelligence platform.
That's fine. So, but the decision intelligence is a very broader term, right? And it's, if you see end-to-end supply chain, you can literally go from upstream raw material, downstream to light point definition, last mile of the delivery. So in the context of Project 44, what are the key decision-making areas you are focusing on and providing help to your customer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I tend to think about, if we asked all the listeners on here and we asked everyone that we know, like, define a supply chain, I think I would get a lot of different answers. And what I've noticed is that there's 2 main things that drive that answer to be so different, depending on who all the folks are. I suspect with you and your background, you'd have a pretty accurate and classical response. But the first thing that I notice influences the answer on what is supply chain is, where are they in their perspective of the supply chain? If they are a transportation company, they tend to have a very transport specific. If they're on the merchandising team, they tend to have, a very product type centric view of a supply chain. And so that's one thing. The second thing is there's kind of an old school thing in a supply chain. If you ask them to draw a picture of a supply chain, they'll start with if you see them start to draw like trucks and ships and things, then that's an old school mindset. If you see them starting with a customer at the end, the customer experience, well, that's a more modern approach. And of course, you could see companies like Amazon flourish that have that. But If we think about supply chain in its entirety, what its purpose is to deliver products to the end customers and to support the goals of the shareholders, which tend to be revenue and cost efficiently. And all the other stuff are just obstacles, some big and some small, to get that accomplished. We definitely started at Project 44. If we think about sourcing, planning, and then logistics and transportation execution, we started in that transportation logistics execution part of the supply chain. And we did that for a couple of reasons. One is I think that was the part that was most broken. There are some really good applications that were already handling the sourcing and planning parts, and even really well, but they're also doing it with a lot of bias about what was actually happening in transportation logistics. When you think about lead time, sourcing, supplier optimization, you think about all those types of things. Um, there were a lot of assumptions and bad assumptions that have been made over time, and we saw that really manifest itself during COVID and tariffs and things. Um, and so when we think about decision intelligence platform, it's what are the decisions that can be made on the logistics and transport side, but then how can that data be used upstream into the sourcing and planning to make better decisions also?
Yes. No, that's fantastic. No, but that makes sense. I don't know. I should have mentioned it. The two of your customers, Eaton, I worked 12 years, right? And Bridgestone, before I was leaving my company or starting my own company, and I was doing Bridgestone because I was head of planning logistics. We have been deploying Project 44, right? And I can tell you from my own experience, especially I can give you a quick example to substantiate the point you're making. It's because COVID happened, right? And the containers was taking forever, right? And I have paid more than 100,000 demurages, honestly, just because we did not have the visibility, right? Since the product would come in, we started using at least proactively, and we integrated with the ERP, and we're telling the customers, okay, this is your bill of lading, this is everything. Here you go, you can track and trace, and we created our own system, and we give integrated with the Project 44, and that issue was gone. Like immediately, it's making decisions on, you know, when to release what's arriving, and it was basic track and trace. But to your point, now you're going next mile. So talking about next mile, we and with the AI, and like you, I'm tracking your competitions as well. You've got plenty of competitions from people like your EDI, which is just like a connectors, to going up to Project 44 and few more, right? So I want to pick up on Project 44 narrative, right? Uh, I have seen recently, I think it's Got the Truck. I think the person who put something on LinkedIn as well. There was some, uh, I would call it wrong messaging and some unethical messaging, but I don't want to go on that part. I just want to keep a fair play here, right? What differentiates Project 44 versus FourKites, right? I don't want to use the word better because better has a different definition, or rather focus on differentiation. What's your claim to fame?
Yeah, so I think there are quite a bit of differences in the company, and to your point, we're leave like culture and things like that. We're put that aside. Um, but I think it just goes back to the very very basics. I started the company to solve the data problem that was in the industry, and then said if we could solve the data problem, then we have permission to put the applications on top. And our competitors that are in that have visibility space, they all started with the application layer first. And then how to connect to carrier data was always an afterthought to them. And sure, they probably got slightly better over the years, but there's just a fundamentally difference in that data quality, data connectivity that underpins. That also, not only does that provide better experience, but it also allowed us to expand globally at scale and significantly more. Now you can measure that, you can see, because like you said, like some of these things, maybe could be subjective or seem like opinion, but it's really easy just to measure the difference between us and a competitor on the visibility side and say, well, like how many API connections they have, how many connections they have to telematics, how many high cameras they have on highways, how many using video OCR, how much are they using agents to make up for this data? And if you really put them side by side into a comparison, you can just tell that there's fundamentally different. We may have very similar on the visibility product, very similar buttons on the application side, but the underlying success is really going to be determined by that connectivity quality. And that costs us hundreds of millions of dollars in R&D just to build that. And what we call that nowadays is our connect. Other differences that I would say between us and other visibility companies that can offer visibility products is the geography and certainly the modes that it can be offered, and of course the team itself. But if you just kind of break down geography, we're certainly the only global company out there. And obviously, a lot of companies could advertise that they are. Anyone could say I guess they are whatever they want to. But you could go on LinkedIn and just cruise around and say, well, who's their international treasury person? Who's their international controller? Do they have how many operations people do they actually have on the continent of Europe? And what you could see is that, the answers you quickly have, like I have, 200 people on the continent of Europe to implement, work with carriers, customer success people, teams, or maybe the brand that you mentioned has, less than 20 people on the whole continent. Most of them are just sellers. So that's pretty big difference. In addition to that, we can take data out of China, which is a really big differentiator. And it's quite obvious when you look at this, this tariff situation that for a layman out there or someone, that a lot of products still sourced in China. And we can also, so we can do visibility from China to Vietnam, Vietnam to China, China to anywhere else in the rest of the world. And so that is, when you're looking for signal upstream and you're thinking about planning, you're thinking about going from proactive to reactive, that's obviously a really, really big data point. Um, and so I can give you time and time again geography examples, but there's also a modal difference. When we're dealing with the global 2000 shippers and the largest LSPs in the world, they're looking for coverage in all those geographies and all the modes. They're looking for barge, they want ferry, they want door to door, they want port to port, they want all these different modes put together. And anytime that there's any type of like proof of value or proof of concept, we're always going to win on the breadth and depth of the network and the quality of the data that's flowing through there.
That's great. I mean, I had a question on global reach, but I think you almost answered that, right? So, why you are in 86 countries was the importance and how you achieved it, but you already answered that. So, I'm gonna skip on the next part. I think I've seen you or on LinkedIn or somewhere or heard from yourself. You call Project 44 like an operating system for logistics, right? So, what does this mean, operating system logistics, and how it will shape the whole supply chain? Because that's a big claim. Because if you think the operating system is runs any machine, your Surface, your Windows, your Apple. So it's a very interesting claim, right? So I just want to pick up on your thought process on why you claiming that.
Yes. And for clarity, I've never said we're the operating system.
If you never said it, sorry, I might I'm more caught. Okay.
It was Craig Fuller from FreightWaves. When he saw us come out with the decision intelligence platform and asked a few questions, he started to suggest that we are the operating system or will become the operating system for logistics.
Interesting.
Which I think is a really intuitive statement from him. And he didn't know it, but we had actually, when we came out with the rebranding of decision intelligence platform, what would we call it? Intelligent operating system was certainly on the table. And we didn't go that direction for a couple of reasons. One is within this market where there's so much disbelief from AI and, other log tech company or just all tech companies that out there, we wanted to make sure that what we released in new branding was something that we could deliver on day one. But still had some room to be aspirational. And kind of to your point, I thought that being an intelligent operating system for supply chains was still a bit too aspirational for us. So when we do it in the future, potentially you could see, some of the best thought leaders like Craig and you are, already suggesting when they see the material that it's an operating system, because it certainly has that vibe and a lot of those capabilities. But at the moment right now, we're going still to market with decision intelligence platform, and we will continue to help our customers operate their supply chains.
Yeah, I just from my experience, industry about 20 years and working for some big companies and some big clients, some consulting recently. And I think there is a lot of weight into this thought with, Craig Fuller comes in. Sorry for my research was not that accurate, and thanks for clarifying. Because if you think the claim of Uber, right? They're doing trains and they're gonna do airplanes, so you can book the whole journey including hotels and everything. So it logically makes sense to me that P44 aspire to become the operating system logistics, because as you explained earlier, you got the highest level of connectivity across multimodal, multi-region, multi-everything. So food for your 2030 strategy maybe, right? So, but I want to move the discussion. I think thanks for this whole strategic, explaining the strategic insights. I want to move the discussion towards more tactical and hopefully even then technical later on. Um, if you have to pick one big customer problem, right, you're facing right now, which you are solving or would you like to solve, what it would be?
Yeah, so that answer is quite a bit different than it would have been a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, which I think is pretty fascinating about the industry and about, the market and where Project 44 is at on its journey. If you had asked me 3 years ago what the biggest problem our customers were, it's like, well, they're dealing with us pulling together all these acquisitions. And we were not immune to acquisitions being hard and difficult and expensive. And then if you had asked me, 2 years ago, 18 months ago, what's the big thing? There's a misconception in the market that somehow we were responsible for their carrier data. Now, this is an interesting topic that can really polarize people, um, and can really actually be a whole 1 hour podcast for itself. So I'll try to be brief, but at the end of the day, it's a three-party system. The the shipper or the LSP hiring the carrier, they have the commercial agreement, and they're the ones that are dictating, do they want to have connectivity to that carrier? Could be connectivity for visibility, for rate quotes, for tendering, for invoices, whatever it is. That's a business relationship that those two parties have. And we are, in a way, a bit like a utility that's just connecting and wiring and sending information back and forth. They could choose to do business through a phone. They could choose to do business through an email. But of course, it's 2025 and companies want to send information back through APIs. And we're the best company in the world at that. So 18 months ago, the big thing is you'd hear some people say it doesn't work. And what that really meant is that oftentimes those companies didn't know. There was two things that were there. One, we didn't have good enough tooling to illuminate how the data was flowing back and forth, the latency, latency, the data completeness, the milestone, like everything that you'd probably really want to know from like a dashboard standpoint. And the reason why is it's actually pretty complicated when you're talking about 256,000 carriers in 186 countries and GDPR and China and all these different connectivity types. And some carriers have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 different APIs, and some APIs for the same thing. It actually gets pretty complicated pretty quickly. Um, the second is that there are a lot of folks, um, and we had a significantly big problem with small LSPs that just have never really bought software before. They don't really know how to run an IT project, how to have resources, how to things on it. And that was a very noisy cohort of customers. It thought that they could just like sign an MSA and walk away and, expect it to work like magic. But this is obviously an unrealistic expectation in enterprise SaaS. There's nothing really that operates like that. If you buy Salesforce, you have to do change management with your sales team. If you buy NetSuite, you have to do change management with your accounting team. These are incredibly powerful platforms if you use them properly, but you don't just sign an MSA and walk away. So 18 months ago, it would have been, this data, what someone would say, data quality. We were never degrading any quality. Uh, Data was never regressive on our platform. But was it their carriers and could they hold in compliance? That's pretty much all behind us now, which is really encouraging to hear. What I find fascinating now is that data's flowing from the carrier partners really well. It's high quality data, it works really well. Um, but uh, not all customers know how to weaponize the data. And so what I mean is, what do they do with this data now? They can see maybe a PO or a sales order, or maybe a truck or maybe a container, depending on where they're at. They could see what's running late. They could see the demerge and detention, the last free day, these types of things you mentioned at Bridgestone, by the way, very innovative team over there in Belgium. Um, they could see these types of information, but it's kind of like, so what? What do I do now? And so the biggest problem we're facing at Project 44 right now is that the product, the technology, and the capabilities have outpaced how a lot of logistics folks actually know how to weaponize it. So that's what we're working on internally. Like, do you put in the planning system, into the sourcing system? How do you make better transportation decisions? But you have people like Doug over at Ford or Kurt at Elcon. Like when you get these really innovative individuals, or Bill that was at WestRock, these folks like this, like they are getting 20, 30, 50x ROIs on Project 44 and transforming entire supply chains. So that's the biggest challenge we have right now, and that's what we're really focused on. So when you think about the scale of magnitude of problems across our
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. And I do training and coaching on AI application supply chain, and this is the dilemma right now. People think that AI will just implement itself, work itself. Not really. You still have to have grasp the capability, the potential of it to apply into your business use case to maximize it, right? And I'm sure we're gonna touch base on your agentic AI decision making later on, but I definitely feel it, and I think there is responsibility. And I'm a management researcher and management student, and I say it all the time. You pick Lean, you pick Six Sigma, you pick any change management, you can pick SNOP if you want to pick it. It all comes down to what are the barriers or success factors for any strategic initiative is leadership focus or executive sponsorship. And you will see, you mentioned few folks from Ford and Brussels. I know them, all of them, their headquarters. Their leadership pretty strong. They are believe on it and they drive it. So that's why it works. Now, talking about the capability and limitations, and we are talking here big companies, right? Capable companies with capable people. And I never worked for a small companies or medium size. I have a view that Project 44 may not be suitable for small companies or SMEs. First of all, correct my assumption here. Or if you have SME customer, what are they? What's their profile? How successful you are with them?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, so we are focused on the global 2000 shippers and then the top 100 LSPs. And what we've noticed is that they have there's just a couple differentiators. One is that they've bought platforms before, and so they know how to implement them properly. They have the resources, they have the talent, um, and they have the volume where it makes sense for them to make the investments. So we and Project 44 is not cheap, but it does have a really large ROI. And at the moment, that's what the platform's set up and built to do. So we're kind of let the competitors, they can have the small deals, small customers. And we're focused on the large enterprises that are looking for really transformative impacts. And so, the largest companies in the world, like Home Depot and Amazon and companies like that, use Project 44.
Okay. But do you have a number like what their top line, or maybe you don't explain that's okay. Because I recently founded a AI powered forecasting company, and we say if you have a top line of, for example, less than 10 million or inventory less than 1 million, you're no good to us because you just don't not big enough for us to use it, right? So do you have any number in your head or in your IPC?
Yeah, generally speaking, like, it's the global 2000, and we're really looking for someone over 5 billion in revenue. And we will make some exceptions for 1 billion revenue customers. Like if we qualify them and you have really competent and innovative people that, we feel that, really understand how to implement software and how to do some great things. That said, what's fascinating is that Project 44 is connected to carriers that do $10,000 a year or maybe even 5,000 a year. And we're also connected to companies, suppliers that are also very, very small, maybe even working out of, their garage making energy bars or whatever it is. So the platform is very friendly with all different sizes of companies. But if somebody's working out of their garage making energy snacks, they probably can just be better serviced by going to like Worldwide Express or Blue Grace or someone like that, and just using their free software, their free TMS, and just handling their shipping. They don't have a very complicated supply chain.
Oh, that makes sense.
But I think that makes a lot of sense. There's a part of the marketing crew that's servicing them.
That's no, that makes sense. So I come across one of the slides, or I think the content on your website while I was researching this podcast, and of course, this whole claim, or not claim, actually, the strategy of autonomous supply chain makes sense. And there was I was looking at the benefit for the customer, and it says improve customer experience, which yes, you do. You can decrease cost, which I understand you can do. by eliminating the penalties and so on and so forth, which I have noticed myself when I was based on. Increase efficiency, definitely. Minimize emissions, definitely. And there was a content on improve cash flow, and then there was a content on reduce buffer stock or lower inventory. And I mean, unfortunately, I'm a planning guy, right? That's what I do for a living, right? And if I put it simply for my audience, right, I would like to have a slightly technical, challenging discussion here. Because, okay, your visibility, lead time is lead time, right? And then to do plan, there's 4 variables: demand variation, average demand, lead time variation, average lead time. Okay. But even though I have a best variation and I'm using your platform and I have all decision making tools, my lead time is not going to change. It will be what it will be. I call this pregnant woman syndrome. Baby gonna take 9 months, it's gonna take 9 months. You can't make it faster, right? So I I'm struggling to connect the capabilities and features of movement and Project 44 with how it will reduce inventory, right? Because I'm just coming from entirely planning background. So maybe I have a blind spot here. Help me out.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. So really, again, innovative companies have proven time and time again that they can take reduce inventory out of their supply chain. But I think this kind of goes to your point. Most of those use cases and what we see right now tend to be more on what's the by using our ETAs, they're able to have more confidence on how much inventory they need to have into their system. Now, what we see is that companies can take 1, 2, maybe after they've really fine-tuned it for, 18 months or so, they can take 3 days of inventory out. And then when you think about our ideal customer profile, ICP, as global shippers, you're talking like some of these companies, you're talking 1 day is at least $10 million of inventory. It could be $100 million. So there's a very, very big ROI there. I think when you're talking about the planning part, this is where we need to do a better job as a company, and where we need to figure out how do we work with some of this planning software, or how can we build applications that complement or improve the planning softwares. But when those planning decisions are being made, and when you're looking at lead times from suppliers, uh, you're working with averages, or you're working with very, very poor data. And what you can't see is what type of current events are happening, what type of weather is in the system, what's going on at port congestion, what kind of strikes are happening at the ports. Any types of these real time events that we can see. And so if you go into our platform today and you do you forecast something and say, hey, it's going to be the PO would be ready to pick up next Friday. We could tell you what the port congestion is going to be in Shanghai. We could tell you if there's any flooding or anything going on inland China that would delay it even getting to the ports. We could tell you uh, then what the transit time that the vessel company, maybe they say it's 21 days. We could tell you actually you should expect 29 days because of some disruption in their network, um, or blank sailings that we are able to predict even that far out. And then we could tell you also when you start to predict out 28, 40 days out into, let's say you're bringing in the LA, we could tell you, hey, uh, maybe you've underwritten that it's 2 days, but it's gonna be 7 days. Now what happens on the planning side is that because all these disruptions are happening, and if you look at a disruption index, like you have these massive spikes over the last couple of years, what does someone planning to do is that they just keep adding transit times onto these dates. And so you have these really elongated transit times. And you're also making decisions off events from which supplier to source from based on these transit times that may or may not be right as we sit here on July 10th, or what would maybe happen next week. They might have been averages from two years ago, or 18 months ago, or 5 years ago, and just keep stacking on dates. So we're able to see all that, which then allows I think, and this is where we need to do a better job as a company. We should get more in front of the planners. We should get more in front of that to make the better decisions for those companies. But what we see right now is that these large companies, just on the confidence of the ETA, on a more tactical transportation execution level, just taking out 1, 2, 3 days. But there should be sourcing decisions that are being made with this data and upstream information.
Yeah, I mean, my suggestion would be, because I do consultancy and I already started our planning software. And as you mentioned that you can predict out up to 20 to 40 days, and given your tech, what you build, and there's a factor of reliability, I think that's a big plus plus. What just needs to happen is actionable insight needs to move towards a planning system. Could be Anaplan, could be SAP, could be whatever. Because one thing which all planners do a mistake, they have this average historical lead time, and they just create the POs and run MRP based on that, which is, I think, is Mickey Mouse, right? And most of the time, if they run a report of planned lead time versus actual lead time, for me, the best way of reducing inventory, I just do a simple exercise. I just pick out all the planning lead times and I ask them, tell me the report of the PO, which is created a PO or received the PO from a supplier, right? And I just compare the two, and I already know they're either late or early, and just save them inventory just by comparing the two, which you have it already because you have the data. So maybe a suggestion for your product team, this lead time, actual lead time insights or predictive insights going back to the planning system, therefore helping them. So great insights from you. I want to move this topic of tactical to some news I've heard, right? Is this the recent layoffs with the Project 44 in, I think it was 2023, about 2016. Of course, you did it for the business reasons. I'm sure you've grown after that, but how you kept the customers and your people happy during that time?
Yeah, so, you mentioned 2023, so, 2 years ago. I think anytime that you are doing, uh that you're letting people go, I think that's always, like, a really painful thing, that's always really, really personal to me. Whether it's for performance or it's for, uh, but budget regions. I think the reality is when you look at 2022, there was a mindset from the investor community and really just, folks in general, grow at all cost. And as interest rates changed, uh, and investment expectations also changed, and there was a shift to profitability, and, that's just simply because, leverage in the markets and things changed. And so what the investors wanted was, and it's not just Project 44 investors, it's investors everywhere, they just want profitable growth, or they want to see a path and they want to see more efficient growth, which again is just a byproduct of the cost of capital. Um, and so as you're growing, as you're going through this, there's, an opportunity to shape the team and get the right folks on. We also have a very unique approach when we acquire a company that, we don't let anyone go when we first acquire them. We come in, we see what people's talents are, we see what the capabilities are, we see if they can, assimilate with the culture, and what they can be. Oftentimes, they're smaller companies. Maybe they came from a 50-person or 75-person or 150-person company. And so sometimes they have really unique skills that are really, really amazing to us. And sometimes it's not a fit either. And so as we made those 6 acquisitions, you have roles like that. And of course, you naturally start to have, some redundancy in roles also. And so what we do is we give people the training and the opportunity to reinvent themselves. I think, not every human is up for that task or desires that task. And so
Yeah, yeah.
I have to have a good, honest conversation with them and a good handshake and go 2 separate ways. Regarding how do you keep the customers happy, in that process, I think you try to communicate with them. I wouldn't suspect that we're perfect or that we handled everything perfectly. We're certainly a lot better, at that nowadays than we were then. Um, but, we're a frontier technology, and when you're a frontier technology, there's gonna be changes in that business, as you're rapidly innovating for customers, and that's what we're focused on.
Mhm, mhm. No, that's fantastic. So talking about technology, I want to move discussion on the tech side. I had some questions regarding the connectivity and China tracking, which you already answered. So I'm not going to repeat that because for the time's sake. But I want to focus on two things. AI is in frontier everywhere. If you don't do AI, you're dead, right? And from your theory of connect, see, act, AI is playing a big part. So I have a two-part question here, because to AI to work, data quality is important, right? And we know how good or bad the data quality across the logistics supply chain. So how you are basically maintaining the data quality across the layer, right? And then if you can give me some examples, concrete examples where the AI and tech you have built is really helping making good decisions or maybe some automation example, which is again reducing cost, improving efficiency, adding to sustainability. So it maybe just clear the data quality part and then move to some examples for me, please.
Yeah, great. So when I think about AI at Project 44, there's two ways that I like to think about it. One is what's the AI that's in the platform, which is kind of where you started with, and then you think about what's AI ops and AI go to market. And so let's put AI ops and AI go to market aside, but we invest very heavily in our people and creating efficiencies on AI ops and AI go to market. The next is on the platform itself. And you correctly described the platform. So the decision intelligence platform, if you think about it from a product family standpoint, it has a TMS, a visibility, it has yard management, and then it has a last mile. Another way to think of it and how you correctly described it is we like to say it breaks down into 4 steps. You connect, you see, you act, and then you can automate. And when you look at connect, see, act, automate, the very first thing that we deployed AI on last year when we were looking at the planning was how can we really improve data quality from the carriers. And we've been doing this for quite some time, and we acquired a company called Clear Metal for $65 million about 4 or 5 years ago, and that's really all they did. They were the number 2 ocean visibility company in the world. We acquired a number 1 ocean visibility company in the world called Ocean Insights, and the big difference between the two was just how they thought about data, and it was significantly different. What Clear Metal did is they were Stanford folks and PhDs and, master's degrees and things, and they just said, "Hey, let's just take the existing data that's out there and let's just make it better." And they were primarily, working off of EDI, and that was really fascinating approach to me, because I always said, "Let's just get better connectivity through API." And so when you look at this data, we've been doing this for years on this improving the data quality from the carriers. We do that from a number of ways is we get multiple sources of data. We don't just rely on the carrier's data when possible. That could be satellite, it could be cameras, it could even be using voice and messaging agents to call carriers when something's going wrong. If a carrier is consistently sending milestone updates every, 31 minutes, and then we see they haven't sent anything for, you see 32 minutes, 35, 60 minutes, if that's an atypical things, maybe about 75 minutes we're call the carrier with a voice agent and say, "Hey, we just want to make sure everything's going okay with this truck. Can you let us know what's happening?" Sometimes it's really simple things. They had a bug in their system or their telematics went down and, all of it happened. Great. Well, can you give us the location? You take that information from that voice agent and essentially create a soft API from it. And then you feed that into our algorithm and the customer still has, what it is that they're looking for. We also have agents that are connecting with carriers can negotiate rates or they can dispatch. So real time negotiate rates on the spot market with them. But we also have carriers that, if they want to dispatch orders or transit, execute things there or get proof of deliveries of things. And that could be voice or messaging agents. Now, when we talk about that's on the connect layer. When we talk about on the C layer, there's just an incredible amount that happens there. But one of the easiest things, it's actually a fairly complicated use case, is ETAs. ETA, you want to know if the truck's going to be there. We've had that pretty much mastered for quite some time. But if you want to know where something's picking up in China today, when the ETA is going to be there, that's actually a very, very complicated problem because that may go through 5, 6, 7, 20 different companies' hands.
Absolutely.
Reality is oftentimes we don't know, or the freight forwarder doesn't know, or the shipper doesn't know. They don't even know all the vendors that it's actually all the carriers that it's going to go through. And so being able to predict events before you even know the routes and the carriers is actually quite complicated. And we're getting pretty good at that. And that allows companies to look at that PO or that sales order, which is obviously where as a planner, I think you can appreciate knowing where a truck or container at is like an inconvenience. You want to know where's that sales order. Where's that SKU? Where's that part number? When you get into the to the act layer, this is phenomenal. Now you can actually start to see rates. You can see market rates. You can surface carriers that weren't possible before. This is all enabled by AI. And then when you get into the fourth layer, which is automate, this is where because there's such good quality data and we have such good products on Connect, See, and Act, you can actually automate. And when you automate with data that's quantifiable, that doesn't have bias, you can just do some absolute remarkable things. And that's never been possible before. And we spend a lot of money on it. We invest a lot of capital in that. And it manifests itself in a number of ways. There's essentially a co-pilot called Mo that you can interact with. And there's agents that can be used at your will to go accomplish tasks.
That's no. So I have one more question on tech, but building on the 4 stages you have explained very nicely. Do you have like a customer story? Like I don't want to go into the technical words. I want to more focus on the real customer emotional, or let's call it economic impact using this platform. Do you have any story for me to share? Maybe you can name a customer, maybe you don't. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, we have so many. And you just mean like specifically with AI or just using
Yeah, yeah. It's let's pick AI because that's a really in thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I just got a email. I'm trying to think if I can mention the company's name because they're publicly traded. Most of our companies are publicly traded.
Yeah, you don't have to. We just call it customer X. So I'm more interested in the story and the experience rather than a name. Yeah.
It's a very large U.S. Domestic auto company that all of us know really, really well. And I just got an email from them that they just saved millions of dollars again. Last year they said they saved over $100 million using Project 44, and a lot of that was from Connect C Act. And now they just sent me one this morning, so it's just a lot of recency bias. Um, that they just did again by using the AI products. In this particular case, because we take the ETA for the trucks and the containers and the trains into their facilities, and that's optimized. So you have the AI that uses the correct ETAs. It actually goes farther upstream if I think about it. You have the AI that tells them uh, what their last free day is on uh, uh, at the port, the terminal, and then so they're optimizing there, which saves them money, and then they have the actual ETA for the container into the yard, and where historically maybe that truck would just come in and it would go and be put into the yard and kind of go through a slow process. They take the ETA from that, and then our yard management software then takes they have priorities in all their doors and all their parts, and they know what they need. And then the container can go through an express check-in, just it doesn't have to stop at the guard shack, just gets express open gate. Then it goes directly into the door. So, and then it's unloaded first. And then for this auto company, they don't have to have the parts sitting there, and then the parts can get processed through the DC, and then they can get sent over to the dealership. So then the car can be repaired faster. The customer's happier because they get their car back faster. So that's kind of like this customer experience. Now, the email I got this morning was that just off the they've already millions and millions on the terminal, the port, the ETAs. But this one is like, hey, just to let you know, we saved healthy 7-figure deals on just the yard hustling bid that they just redid, because there's so much efficiencies from stacking all those AI use cases of what's that ETA, what trucks should be pulled up. They don't need nearly as many yard moves. So really, really tactical. And a lot of people are kind of maybe glancing over that, but hey, if you're in the
Oh yeah.
automotive, and I think they paid like $300,000 for that product, and they just saved healthy 7-figure deals for just that one thing. And they've done all kinds of other use cases. So that's just one example.
I mean, it's fascinating. You have already given very few fascinating examples, or this one is it's very interesting. And I think, and I've got more than 100,000 followers, and the good newsletter 70,000. And the what I noticed is a lot of people talking about AI, but the use cases people are posting is pretty crappy, right? They are very theoretical. There's just like almost you can go to ChatGPT and ask, say, give me the application of AI logistics. It whatever it turns out, people are posting, and I think it's bad for the community itself. What I would encourage you and your marketing people is, if you are guys allowed, you got some fantastic case studies, some use cases, right? And if they start posting, I'm happy to share with people, no problem, right? So do that, because I think this kind of real concrete example or use cases with the benefits are really missing right now. I think thank you for sharing. Now, I'm now going to move slightly quick because I think I want to wrap it up within next 15 minutes. It's already long, and we have scheduled time, of course. Um, if you can tell me one tech after AI which could be necessary or could change the logistic landscape, what it would be. The usual one comes to my mind is IoT and all that, but you might have a different idea. What do you say?
So what new tech after AI could change?
Because I think blockchain is a bit Mickey Mouse, right? I'm sorry to say, but I think blockchain is a Mickey Mouse. Must try this with IBM. They shut it down. There was a reason. So
Yeah,
just try to.
you you and me both. I was basically crucified for disparaging blockchain, 6, 7 years ago. It's really bizarre in supply chain because at the premise of so much blockchain, it's not the only use case, but it's often like if two parties don't know each other. And
Yeah.
it's just not the app and supply chain. If you're a planner, you're buying from a supplier, you probably know that supplier. And if you're hiring a carrier, you probably know that carrier.
Mm.
There are starting to be exceptions to that though, as like we're able to surface carriers that say like a shipper or an LSP has never used before. Could that be the solution? And we haven't ran into that yet. But I have thought, well, maybe I'll eat my words. On IoT, yeah, I think there's some pretty fascinating technologies that are being out there. I know AVC invested in a company. I think it's called like Trackonomy, where you have an IoT device basically inside the label itself. And so I think that would be really interesting with like a 2 month battery or something. All know I think Tive has done well. But as things get smaller, batteries get longer, there could be some really fascinating things. And just as more data is available, there's some fascinating parts that could be there. But I think like for me, when I think it's really those are all that is exciting to me. And it's just another data point for us to connect into, for us to be able to automate and to elevate the conversation. So many supply chains now are just reactive and firefighting. And anytime I seem to talk about AI on a podcast, someone will crucify me and says, "What's everyone going to do for a job?" It's like, well, that might be a bigger question for society as a whole. But I can tell you right now in supply chain that you have very, very talented people that are doing very tactical things that underutilize their ability. And
Yeah.
by automating, things you didn't get a ping for a truck or negotiating a rate quote, like these are pretty low value things. What you want is really great minds optimizing supply chains, thinking about what's the next frontier market they could sell into. Where should they be sourcing these products from? How could they sell these products? How can they do it all with less emissions? Like these are the things I think the great minds should be focused on. And so I guess I'd go back to what I think is the most exciting thing is our autopilot that we're building to elevate the supply chain executives and the logistics folks that are out there.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. I mean, given examples of AI you've given and the tech you focused on, I think you mentioned few hundred million you spend in R&D and connecting and building the business tech. In my experience, if you think all the supply chain softwares available, right? Logistics tech have the slimmest of margin, right? Even the LSPs are the slimmest of margin because it's anything with software or logistics. We see the P&L for any company, this sits in a support cost, right? It doesn't go into the COGS, right? So the point I'm making is following: you be spending so much money. Of course, you have our 1,000 biggest customers and so on and so forth. How you make sure you get the return of investment? Because spending in R&D is great, but if you're not getting the ROI, it's not a great business decision, is it? So are you seeing that or not?
Yeah, I think for us, like there are real, network affects the business. There's a real moat that's there. You are right. We spent, over $1 billion on R&D. But we also are the largest generation two logistics tech company in the world. Um, And so, there's certainly is something there. I think the thing is that the business is also very complicated. Not only is it a network business, which tends to cost this when you look at them tend to be quite expensive you have to forward deploy capital in network businesses very often. Ours is a multi-layer network business. So depending on how you're counting the network, the layers of network, it's probably, a 3, 4, 5. You could maybe even count all the way up to a 20-layer network business. Now, if you ask the best investors in the world, show me a comp of another 3 or 4 layer network business. they actually really struggle to do that. And so let's take you talked about Uber earlier, and I'm not familiar with the specific examples, but in logistics, let's say you have this multi-layer network business, at least we do at Project 44, and we have to connect to all the truckload carriers, all the LTL carriers, all the drayage carriers, all the rail carriers, all the terminals, all the ports, all the ferries, all the barges. And it's a different network and a different set of rules in Europe than it is at the US. And even when you look at a truckload, it's different. It's a different network. Business has to be created for the mobile app, then for the telematics, then for the actual API. But where it gets complicated and different than, say, like a travel company that's all like a bookings.com that's done very, very well, uh, is that yes, you can book a hotel and a flight and a car, but they're not, although you as a human, you kinda are moving yourself from one of these things to the other, and you kinda have your own separate booking, and the human mind and the individual is kinda connecting these. When you're talking about moving freight, well, freight doesn't really have a mind, and it doesn't have legs either, and so it's being, like, kinda transported, and what customers, especially in your role, in your experience as a planner, you wanna know at that PO level or that part number, that SKU number, and so being able to connect all those different networks together, where they're all different tracking numbers or different rate quote numbers and all these different things that have to happen across the way in an automated way when you kinda have this master identifier is very, very unique and very expensive to build. It is a very complicated business. I think, it is still a bit of a TBD, and we won't know until we know, like, will it work out? And I think it would just be extremely addicting. You keep it in the other way. Yeah, but I can tell you we have a dedicated team, we have very committed investors, and we have the best customers in the world, and everyone's cheering for us. Everybody's working really hard to go and run towards it and accomplish it because at the end of the day, it solves real business problems.
It does. It does. It does. Let's call it a quick fire, right? Some are fun, some are challenging, but the challenge for you here is quick fire. Keep it short and precise, right? Uh, Biggest mistake Project 44 has made.
Oh, gosh, I almost mentioned the former employee's name, but, that part.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
The biggest mistake we made, it's definitely, like, the biggest mistake I made was taking the advice of, like, hire quote unquote "professional" managers and, like, having them come in. Like,
Yeah.
as it doesn't work. Maybe it works at 1,000,000,000 or 2,000,000,000 or 10,000,000,000 of ARR, but certainly doesn't work when, you're the size that we are, a couple 100,000,000 in ARR, like, doesn't work.
Yeah. Fair point. If you have to, okay, next biggest disruption you see coming could be anything, which could change logistics.
Well, there's one that, we're probably all concerned about as individual humans, which would be, unfortunately, it appears that we're in World War III. It feels very peaceful here in the US, and even when we're in Western Europe, although slightly less comfortable, there does seem to be, a very uncomfortable, situation that's brewing in the world, and perhaps that threat will be constant for some time as we've seen, weapons that can do more destruction, at a lower cost of entry point with maybe some questionable actors with bad intentions. So that's unfortunately maybe something that's there. But what I actually think is maybe more immediate and maybe something that's, I don't know, is more positive, but a little bit that we can all do something about is that I think that there will be, the doors will open, for goods to be made out of China probably sometime in the back half or early next year. And I think some type of, and in other parts of the world. And as that starts to happen, we're going to see a massive inflow of product, and it will have some similarities to what we saw with COVID, and some bullwhip that starts to happen. And so that'll be something that likely happens in the next 6 months.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. I think that's my worry as well. And currently, the tariff thing is just horrible. What's happening now? The move dates is moved to 1st August. We'll see. So, favorite transport system: truck, rail, ocean, air. Favorite transport: truck, rail, ocean, air. Pick one. Okay, fine. If Project 44 would be meme, what it would look like?
If it was a meme,
Yeah, Project 44 is a B. Modern project like.
You busted me on that one because I'm so uncool. I don't even really know memes very well. So like I would be like, okay, I need the photo
Okay.
for it. And like even
I will, yeah. So let me do this. I will do a meme for you. I'll send it to you. See if you like it and you can post it. Like, here's my, that will, I have on my link, it's called Meme Extrovert. So I specialize in creating logistics meme. Right.
oh cool.
Okay. Therefore the question, right? What is the weirdest tracking your team have identified? Like something really weird.
What was the question again?
What is the strangest transport? What is the strangest thing you have transported or tracked? You know?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know. We don't really get into the data and look at
Get it?
like like
Okay.
I can tell you, there's nearly $4 trillion of global GDP that goes through us. So it's
Yeah.
4.6 million unique shipments a day. And obviously it would be crazy. And then I don't know if it'd be appropriate for us to go look in customers' data and see what's there. But if you look at the customers that we have, like, you know, if it's shipped, it's gone to our platform.
Fair point. Fair point. Okay, so you end up in logistics. I've seen your LinkedIn profile. Then you find a problem. You're solving a real problem. I get it, all that. But if Jet is not in logistics or not doing P44, what other industry would you like to disrupt?
I don't know if I'd be able to disrupt it, but I'd probably make my money in real estate.
Let's say, okay, that makes sense. Pepsi or Coke?
Oh, they're both customers.
That's why I asked the question. You can't pick one. Come on, you have to pick one.
Yeah, I'll stay neutral on it.
Mutual. Okay, that's fine. Last, I
I think your is great. It depends on what you're eating and how you want to pair them. They kind of pair
like.
different.
Okay. And I'm not, this is not about you. This is about Project 44. So let's assume you present Project 44 as a body. If Project 44 was a superhero, what superpower it would have?
We would be able to see around corners. We would be able to bend reality. Project 44 would have moxie, grit, integrity, and fight for what's right for mankind to make the world a better place. That would be like our
Like,
superhero.
that is Avengers stuff, right? Thank you, Jed. You've been pleasure, mate. Really nice talking to you. Right. Thank you for appearing in the podcast. Thank you for sharing knowledge. I appreciate you very much.
Thanks for having me on. It's a great experience. Ciao.
Yeah. Ciao. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you, guys. Hopefully you see this video, subscribe to the channel. Bye.